What's wrong with it?
I was just worried about your response, that's all.
You've done a brilliant job, mate. Brilliant job.
No one saw it coming. Not the loyal viewers, not the network, not even those who believed The Repair Shop was simply a gentle show about fixing old treasures. While audiences were watching joyful reunions and tearful restorations, something else was quietly breaking. Not an heirloom, but the calm, trusted image at the heart of it all. Most fans didn't realize that behind the scenes, tensions had begun to rise. Without warning, the BBC pulled certain episodes from rotation. J-Blades vanished from the spotlight. And in the middle of the storm, Steve Fletcher made a move no one expected, and it changed everything. The rise of The Repair Shop. It's hard to imagine British daytime television today without The Repair Shop. The show didn't arrive with a lot of noise, but it quietly carved out a space for itself and then expanded into a global phenomenon. Its origin story, its format, and the people behind it are all a big part of why it has become so beloved, not just in the UK, but around the world. The show first aired on BBC Two on March 27, 2017, and was produced by Ricochet Productions. From the beginning, it was a simple concept that focused on a team of expert restorers taking on worn or broken items of deep sentimental value. These weren't just random objects. They were often family heirlooms with decades of emotional history behind them. And most significantly, all of this was done at no cost to the owners. The filming location added even more charm. The series is shot at the Weald and Downland Living Museum in Singleton, West Sussex. The museum, with its timber-framed buildings and peaceful rural setting, gives the show a timeless and authentic atmosphere. It feels like the kind of place where time slows down and stories are preserved just as carefully as the items being restored. From the start, The Repair Shop distinguished itself through its tone. Each item was treated with patience, respect, and genuine curiosity. Viewers were invited into the process of both physical and emotional restoration, and the results were often deeply moving. Whether it was a broken clock passed down through generations, or a tattered teddy bear that comforted someone through a difficult childhood, the stories behind each object gave the show its emotional backbone. By Series 4, the show had officially moved from BBC Two to BBC One, a sign of its growing popularity. The Repair Shop has produced 14 seasons and over 300 episodes, a major achievement for a show with such a niche format. It continues to draw millions of viewers with each new episode, and the show found its audience not just in the UK, but internationally. Spin-off versions have since launched in countries like Australia, the Netherlands, and Belgium, each one adapting the format to their local audiences while keeping the same core values of care, craftsmanship, and connection. The program's quiet success didn't go unnoticed by critics or the public. In 2023, The Repair Shop won the National Television Award for Best Daytime Show, beating out longtime favorites. It wasn't just a win for the producers, it was a nod to how much the show had impacted its viewers. But what makes the show even more appealing are the experts themselves, craftsmen and women with decades of experience in their fields. Steve Fletcher, a master clock and watch restorer, comes from a long line of horologists. In fact, he's been working in the trade since he was just 16 years old, carrying on a family tradition that dates back to the 80s. He runs the Clock Workshop in Oxfordshire and has been part of The Repair Shop since it launched in 2017. Steve's the person people turn to when their old grandfather clock has stopped ticking or when a century-old barometer needs to be brought back to life. Over time, his calm demeanor, precision, and steady presence have made him a fan favorite. There's something soothing about watching Steve work. The way he disassembles complex mechanisms, cleans each tiny gear, and reassembles them with care. But while Steve Fletcher has been a constant on the show, there's no doubt that the most publicly recognizable figure from The Repair Shop is Jay Blades. Jay joined the show early on as a furniture restorer. With his flat cap, black-rimmed glasses, and laid-back East London charm, Jay quickly became the show's main presenter and, in many ways, its emotional core. Unlike Steve, who was already well-established in his trade before joining the show, Jay's journey to The Repair Shop was not straightforward. In fact, his path to becoming one of Britain's most trusted TV personalities involved some of the most difficult personal struggles a person can go through. His past was filled with setbacks, from financial hardship and academic struggles to mental health challenges that nearly derailed everything. So how exactly did Jay Blades go from the brink of personal collapse to becoming the face of one of the most heartfelt shows on British television? What was he really going through behind the scenes, and what role did Steve Fletcher play in his journey? The personal battles of Jay Blades. Jay Blades may be known today as the warm, reassuring voice at the heart of The Repair Shop, but his journey to becoming a respected craftsman and beloved television personality was far from easy. Before the cameras, the applause, and the recognition, Jay faced obstacles that many fans never knew about, some of which he carried with him for the major part of his life. Jay was raised by his mother, Barbara, a hard-working woman who did everything she could to support Jay and his brother. Their household was a modest one, marked by financial hardship. Growing up without much money meant that basic things like new clothes, toys, or even furniture were often out of reach. Jay once shared that they never really bought any furniture. Instead, they made do with what they had or found ways to fix old discarded pieces. Without knowing it, those early experiences planted the seeds for his lifelong love of restoration. But the struggles of Jay's childhood weren't just financial. One of the most jarring revelations of his life came much later. For years, Jay knew very little about his father. But when he finally did get a clearer picture, the truth was almost too unbelievable to process. He discovered that his father had 25 other children, scattered across various countries, many of whom Jay has never met. The news was shocking and painful, not just because of the sheer number, but because it emphasized how absent and disconnected his father had been from his life. That void left a deep emotional imprint on him, shaping the way he understood family, identity, and belonging. Outside the home, Jay faced even more challenges. Growing up in 1980s, London as a young black boy meant dealing with racism on a regular basis. But for Jay, the discrimination wasn't limited to dirty looks or rude comments. It was more serious and sometimes even violent. One story that still haunts him involves a terrifying experience he had at just 14 years old, when he says he was mistreated by police officers while in the back of a police van. The incident was never officially documented, but the emotional scars stayed with him. Encounters like that made Jay feel unsafe and deeply mistrustful of authority at a young age. At school, Jay struggled to keep up, not because he wasn't smart, but because he was dealing with something that no one had diagnosed. He left school with no qualifications, unable to read or write properly. For a long time, teachers and classmates assumed he just wasn't trying hard enough. But in truth, Jay was living with undiagnosed dyslexia. Without support or understanding from the education system, he simply fell through the cracks. It wasn't until he turned 31 that he was formally diagnosed. During a literacy test, it was revealed that Jay had the reading ability of an 11-year-old. By that point in his life, he had already become a father, built some career experience, and survived countless setbacks. But the inability to read still hung over him like a shadow. It affected everything from filling out forms to reading instructions to helping his children with homework. To cope, Jay learned to avoid reading altogether. He got by using voice notes, relying on others for help, or simply pretending to understand things he couldn't actually read. It was a hidden burden that he carried quietly for decades. Despite that, Jay never gave up on improving himself. And in 2022, he took a bold step toward changing his life. He partnered with the BBC to film a powerful documentary called Jay Blades, Learning to Read at 51. The program followed Jay's deeply personal journey as he tackled his lifelong struggle with literacy head-on. Viewers watched as he worked one-on-one with tutors, learning phonics and practicing basic reading skills that most people master in primary school. It was emotional, humbling, and honest. Jay didn't try to hide his vulnerability. Instead, he leaned into it, hoping that his story might encourage others who were struggling in silence. The documentary didn't just show Jay's determination, it revealed how much shame and fear he had carried for so long. In one particularly moving moment, Jay admitted that he had always felt like an imposter, someone who was successful in the public eye, but constantly worried that people would discover his secret. Reading, something so many people take for granted, had been a source of anxiety and embarrassment for him for most of his adult life. Yet, true to form, Jay approached the challenge the same way he approaches broken furniture, with patience, humility, and care. And slowly, letter by letter, he began to rebuild the confidence he'd lost a long time ago. The literacy journey was just one of many personal battles Jay has faced, but it became a symbol of everything he had overcome, from poverty to racism, abandonment, and a lack of formal education. Even after facing years of hardship, from childhood poverty to undiagnosed dyslexia, Jay Blades' most difficult chapter came later in life, at a time when most would have expected him to have finally found his footing. By 2015, Jay had been running a social enterprise called Out of the Dark, a charity based in High Wycombe that trained disadvantaged young people in furniture restoration. The project wasn't just work for him, it was actually personal. It reflected everything he had fought for, giving people from underprivileged backgrounds the skills, structure, and second chance he never had growing up. But despite its noble mission, the charity ran into serious funding issues, and when the financial support dried up, Out of the Dark collapsed. It was a crushing blow, not only because of what the charity meant to Jay, but also because its failure triggered a domino effect in his personal life. Around the same time, his marriage fell apart, and just like that, the foundation he had been trying to build for himself and others came crashing down. The collapse left Jay in a situation he never saw coming. With no income, no support, and nowhere to turn, he became homeless. For a period, he lived in his car, trying to stay afloat, while shielding his struggles from the outside world. It was a low point of complete isolation, where the emotional toll of everything he had endured finally caught up with him. During this time, Jay faced serious mental health struggles. The sense of failure, loss, and instability became overwhelming. At one point, he was reported missing, sparking concern among those close to him. The situation had become dire, and it was reportedly through the intervention of a close friend who found him and helped bring him back to safety that Jay was able to begin the process of recovery. Looking back, Jay has spoken candidly about how close he came to giving up. He admits he was in a dark place, where even basic motivation was hard to find. But something shifted once he realized that he didn't have to face it alone. Community support, small acts of kindness, and eventually therapy played a huge role in helping him stabilize and slowly begin to rebuild. Therapy gave him the tools to understand not just his immediate crisis, but the emotional weight he had carried for decades, from the abandonment to the shame, trauma, and unresolved pain from his youth. For to Jay, healing didn't come quickly or dramatically. It came slowly, through long conversations, quiet reflection, and the courage to open up about things he had spent a lifetime trying to hide. By the time The Repair Shop came calling in 2017, Jay was still piecing himself back together. But the opportunity to return to furniture restoration, this time on national television, gave him something new to focus on. The show offered more than a job. It gave him a renewed sense of purpose and direction. For several years, Jay focused on his work and avoided the spotlight outside the show. But then, in 2024, Another deeply painful event forced him to step away again. His uncle, Richard Brathwaite, passed away under tragic circumstances, and this shook Jay to his core. Richard wasn't just a relative, he had been a supportive figure in Jay's life, someone who understood the importance of second chances and family. In the weeks following his uncle's death, Jay withdrew from social media and began cancelling public appearances, including a scheduled talk at the Hay Festival, one of the UK's most respected literary events. The decision to cancel wasn't about professional conflict or scheduling, it was about mental health. Jay later explained that he needed time away from the public eye to grieve and protect his emotional well-being. What made his response so relatable to many fans was the honesty in how he handled it. Rather than pretending everything was fine, Jay publicly acknowledged his need for therapy and counseling, stating that he was seeking professional help to deal with the emotional strain. He didn't frame it as weakness, but as self-care, and in doing so, he reinforced a message he had been living out for years, that it's okay to fall apart as long as you're willing to take the steps to rebuild. But just as Jay Blades was starting to find peace and rebuild his life again, a devastating controversy surfaced, one that would spark headlines, fuel speculation, and challenge everything the public thought they knew about the calm world of the repair shop. The controversy that changed everything. By 2024, Jay Blades had become one of the most recognizable faces on British television. For years, he had earned the public's admiration not just through the repair shop, but also through his advocacy for mental health, education, and second chances. He was the kind of figure people rooted for, someone who had overcome adversity and used his platform to uplift others. But that image took a sharp turn in late 2024, when news broke of a scandal that would shift everything. At the center of it all was Jay's marriage to Lisa's Boson, a fitness instructor he had married in 2022. The two had appeared happy in public, often sharing updates online about their relationship, travels, and life together. For Jay, who had previously experienced the pain of divorce and the breakdown of his family, the marriage represented a fresh start and a chapter filled with hope and stability. But behind the scenes, things were not as calm as they seemed. In November 2024, reports emerged that Jay Blades had been formally charged with controlling and coercive behavior toward his wife, Lisa. According to official court documents, the alleged incident spanned from January to September 2024, a period during which the couple was still publicly appearing united. The charges were serious. Under UK law, controlling and coercive behavior refers to a pattern of acts designed to isolate, intimidate, or dominate a partner, even without physical violence. These kinds of cases are notoriously complex, often involving private text messages, financial control, emotional manipulation, and repeated threats. Although it can be difficult to prove, it comes with pretty damaging consequences, especially for public figures, if substantiated. News of the charges sent shockwaves through the media. For a figure like Jay, who had built a reputation on kindness, compassion, and vulnerability, the allegations seemed completely out of step with the public image he had cultivated. Within hours, headlines began appearing across major outlets, dissecting every angle of the case. Social media exploded with speculation, commentary, and, predictably, polarized reactions. The BBC acted quickly. Within days, the broadcaster pulled several recent episodes of The Repair Shop that prominently featured Jay. In upcoming reruns, his appearances in episode introductions were quietly edited out. Though no official statement was made linking the decision directly to the charges, industry insiders suggested that the move was a standard reputational response, particularly with a trial still pending. The trial itself was scheduled for August 2025, leaving nearly a full year of uncertainty and public scrutiny ahead. In the meantime, Jay has stepped away from filming new episodes and deactivated all social media accounts. He also resigned from various ambassadorial and charitable roles, including his position at a UK university where he had served as chancellor. It was a full-scale retreat from public life, and a rare moment for a television personality at the height of their career. The public response was mixed. Some longtime fans were shocked, unable to reconcile the warm-hearted figure they saw on screen with the accusations being made behind closed doors. Others adopted a wait-and-see approach, pointing out that allegations don't equate to guilt and that everyone deserves a fair trial. A small but vocal segment of supporters continued to defend Jay online, arguing that the charges felt out of character and questioning the timing of the complaint. Still, the situation has brought up broader conversations in the media about domestic issues, emotional control, and how fame can sometimes obscure the reality of people's personal relationships. While Jay had previously been praised for his openness about mental health and his literacy struggles, the allegations have now invited deeper scrutiny into the aspects of his private life that had never been publicly discussed before. One of the most complex parts of the fallout was the silence that followed. Although he pleaded not guilty at the court hearing of the case, Jay didn't release any public statement defending himself. Nor did Lisa's bosun comment further on the matter once the legal process began. The lack of commentary left a vacuum that has since been filled by speculation, half-truths, and heated debates. Meanwhile, the repair shop continued to air, but with an unmistakable shift in tone. In episodes where Jay had once taken the lead by greeting guests, introducing objects, and offering emotional support, other cast members now stepped forward to fill the space. Most noticeably, Steve Fletcher, Jay's longtime friend and fellow cast member, began to appear more prominently. For some, the show no longer felt the same without Jay's presence. But for others, it became a moment to reflect on the team's strength and adaptability. Despite the controversy surrounding one of its most beloved figures, the program pressed on, careful not to let the allegations derail everything it had built over nearly a decade. And while the media storm swirled around Jay, something else caught the attention of devoted viewers. And that's a silence that spoke volumes. The rest of the cast members of The Repair Shop offered no public statements, interviews, defenses, or denials. But quietly, some fans noticed something different about Steve Fletcher and the decision he took in the wake of the scandal. In moments of crisis, who stands by you and why? What does Steve Fletcher know that the world doesn't? And what role is he quietly playing behind the scenes as Jay's world seems to fall apart? Steve Fletcher's shocking decision. In the months following Jay Blade's sudden withdrawal from public life, the repair shop quietly continued without its most recognizable face. Episodes aired with careful edits, online discussion slowed, and cast members remained largely silent. But then, a single photo reignited the controversy and unexpectedly pulled Steve Fletcher into the spotlight. The photo didn't come from a BBC press release or a formal interview. It actually appeared quietly, shared directly by Steve Fletcher himself, with the caption, "In a break from our Secrets from the Barn tour, I popped in to see Jay the other day for a cup of tea and a lovely chat. Not that the tea wasn't lovely. It was great to catch up. Hope to see him again soon." In the photo, Steve and Jay posed together, smiling, standing side by side, arms casually around each other, looking, to many, like two longtime friends still at ease in each other's company. What might have been an ordinary reunion under different circumstances suddenly became a public debate. Was this a quiet act of forgiveness? Or was it defiance in the face of serious accusations? Was Steve taking a stand, or simply staying loyal to someone he considered family? Fans of the show quickly took sides. Some praised Steve's loyalty, saying it reflected compassion and a refusal to abandon someone just because the media storm had turned against them. Others felt disappointed, wondering whether Steve's closeness to Jay, at a time when the latter was facing shocking accusations of controlling and coercive behavior, sent the wrong message. Some fans saw the post as a symbol of strength, a quiet kind of support that didn't need public justification. After all, Steve and Jay had worked together for years, side by side in the workshop, sharing repairs, stories, and personal moments that the cameras didn't always catch. Their friendship had grown in the background of the show's rise, and for Steve, perhaps that relationship wasn't something that could be undone with a headline. Others, though, viewed the situation differently. They argued that silence is never neutral, especially when it comes from someone in a public position. Could Steve's perceived support of Jay affect his own image? Could this single gesture of a single photo end up rubbing off on him, even if he had nothing to do with the case? Well, the BBC offered no comment, choosing instead to let the show's current format speak for itself. In new episodes, Steve continued his restoration work, focused, measured, and professional as always. But to most viewers, the dynamic has shifted. Without Jay present to greet guests or walk into frame with his signature charisma, the emotional energy of the show has changed. For many viewers, it now rested on the shoulders of those who remained, and Steve Fletcher, like it or not, had quietly become the face of that transition. Of course, this shift came with pressure. For a man who had always preferred to let his craftsmanship do the talking, Steve was now being watched through a different lens. Every word, every appearance, and every piece of body language was being dissected. Was he endorsing Jay? Was he trying to preserve the show's legacy? Or was he simply doing what he had always done by showing up, doing the work, and keeping his personal loyalties separate from public noise? More than anything, the situation raised deeper questions about what loyalty looks like when a scandal is still unfolding. Steve hadn't made any moral judgment. He didn't excuse or condemn. Instead, he seemed to be doing what many wouldn't dare to, and that's remaining present for someone whose life had fallen apart. That choice carries weight, especially in an age of cancel culture, where silence is often seen as complicity. Steve's image, up until this point, had been carefully built around kindness, expertise, and humility. And now, in the eyes of some, that image had become entangled in a controversy he didn't create, but was now standing adjacent to. For The Repair Shop, the moment is a delicate one. The show has always thrived on authenticity, real emotions, quiet stories, and unpolished moments of humanity. Steve Fletcher's decision to stand by Jay may not have come with a press release or a public statement, but it is still a powerful act. It speaks to the complexity of relationships behind the scenes and the difficulty of making clean choices when someone you care about is facing serious allegations. Whether the show will continue to carry that emotional weight successfully, or whether Steve's silence will eventually become louder than any statement he might have made, remains to be seen. What's clear now is that The Repair Shop and everyone involved has entered a new era where the lines between public and private and loyalty and liability are harder than ever to navigate. The rise of The Repair Shop was built on sincerity, quiet moments, emotional depth, and the magic of restoring what seemed lost. Jay Blades was a major part of that journey, and his personal battles made his role on the show feel even more meaningful. But his fall from grace, marked by serious allegations and a looming trial, has shaken the show's foundation. But through it all, Steve Fletcher made a choice not to speak, not to distance himself, but to stand by someone he called a friend. And that decision has sparked its own wave of questions. Whether it's loyalty, risk, or something in between, Steve's silence is a reminder that sometimes the hardest decisions aren't the ones we explain. They're the ones we quietly live with. But what do you think? Should Steve Fletcher distance himself from Jay Blades? Drop your answers in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.